Hello students, hope you all are doing well. I am going to teach you civics today and we are going to begin with the chapter called What is Democracy and Why Democracy. So let us quickly have a look at the chapter. Let us quickly begin with the introduction part. Now in this chapter, what is democracy, why democracy, we will be getting some idea about the democratic forms of government, right? Nowadays, the democratic form of government is spreading more and more countries, alright? Why? We will be learning in this chapter why this is becoming popular, and then it is a better form of governance as compared to a non-democratic government. So, in this chapter, we will be learning about why democratic governments are important, why they are popular, and then we will be comparing them to the non-democratic governments also, that why they are unpopular, why they are not popular among the people. So, now let us see what is democracy, alright. Now, let us move on to the definition of the democracy. Democracy is defined as a form of the government. Democracy is defined as a form of government where the rulers are elected by the choice of people. Now, let us take an example of our own country, which is India. You all know that we live in India. Who is the Prime Minister of our country recently? You all know that Mr. Modi is the Prime Minister of our country. Now, we, the people of India, those who are above 18, they have right to vote. So, they all have voted during the elections and they all have chosen Mr. Modi as the Prime Minister, right? So, Mr. Modi is the ruler which is elected by the choice of people, by the people of India, right? So, we have chosen him. It was not that Mr. Modi was the son of the previous Prime Minister, right? Mr. Modi was chosen by the people. So, in a democracy, we can choose our own leader. Now, recently, you must have seen in the news, let us quickly take example of Afghanistan. What happened in Afghanistan lately? Taliban has attacked Afghanistan and has captured Afghanistan completely. The president and the prime minister had to leave the country, they had to run away from the country. If they would not have run, then these Talibanis would have killed them. And those people who could not leave Afghanistan, those people who got stuck there, they were ruthlessly killed by the Talibanis. So, which means Talibanis were not, chosen by the people of Afghanistan. They did not want them to rule there. So, we can say that Afghanistan is now not a democracy anymore because Talibanis have captured Afghanistan, forcefully, right? So, unlike India, in India we have chosen our own leader, right? But in Afghanistan, Taliban has come there forcefully. So, Afghanistan is not a democracy anymore. Now, let us move on to our next part, which says that the difference between democratic and non-democratic, government is that the power of electing their representative is in the people's hands, which means that in Afghanistan, people did not have power to choose their leader because Talibanis came there. They came and they attacked Afghanistan. They captured Afghanistan forcefully, right? Let us take one more example. You all, if you are following the news, children, if you are not following the news, I would recommend that please start following the news. News is very, very important. So, lately in the news, you must have seen Myanmar. What is happening in Myanmar? Aung San Suu Kyi, who was the leader there, she has been arrested by the army, right? So, what happened? Military leaders, they have captured Myanmar and they have put Aung San Suu Kyi in the jail. So, again, Myanmar is not a democracy. Why it is not a democracy? Because people have not chosen army rulers, right? There is an army rule now. People have not chosen them. People have chosen Aung San Suu Kyi, which is now put behind the bars, and military is now ruling. They are killing people ruthlessly. They are not providing food, shelter, health services to the people. They are doing what they want to do. So we can say that Myanmar is not a democracy. So this is the basic difference between the democracy, the democratic government and the non-democratic government. I hope this is clear to you all. So let us take examples of some non-democratic governments. Again, we will be discussing Myanmar. So in Myanmar, the army controller becomes the ruler and people over there have no role to play in electing their representative. As I told you, recently in Myanmar, the army rulers have captured the country and they have put the leader Aung San Suu Kyi behind the bars, right? Now they are, ruling the country, okay, which is not acceptable, which is, I can say, example of non-democratic government, okay. In Saudi Arabia, the representatives are from royal families. This is the base on which they qualify to become kings. Now, what does it mean? See, in Saudi Arab, the kings are there, right? There is a monarchy. Now, the son of the king will be the next king, right? Now, this is not democracy. In democracy, what happens? We have to choose our ruler, right? But the king's son, what if he is not capable? People have to accept it, right? Even if the ruler is not capable, the son of the king is not capable, he will be becoming the next king and people have to accept it. So this is not democracy. So we can say that these are the examples of non-democratic governments. Alright, now let us see features of democracy, the most important part of the chapter. In exams, such question can come that state any 4 features of democracy. What are the features of democracy? Describe the features of democracy. So this is something very, very important. Let us see features of democracy one by one. So first feature is decision making power should rest with the people. That is, the rulers elected by the people must take all major decisions. So I'll be explaining these features. First of all, I'm going to read them one by one and then we are going to learn them in detail. Next is free and fair elections. That is also very, very important for a healthy democracy. Then one vote, one value. That is also again very, very important. You all must be aware that when Britishers were here, we were not a democracy and there was no, voting system, right? Later on it was introduced, but it was not applicable to all the citizens of India. Next is rule of law and respect for rights, and finally limits on government. So these are few features of democracy which we are going to learn in detail. Let us look at the first feature of the democracy, which is major decision by the elected leaders, which means all the major decisions in a democracy should be taken by the elected leaders only. किसी भी healthy लोकतंत्र के अंदर जो major decisions हैं वो जो इलेक्टेड लीडर्स होते हैं उन्हीं को लेने चाहिए. इसको हम एक एग्जाम्पल की हेल्प से समझते हैं. लेट अस टेक एन एग्जाम्पल ऑफ पाकिस्तान हियर. व्हाट हैपेंड इन पाकिस्तान वे बैक इन 1999. तो पाकिस्तान के अंदर एक जनरल परवेज मुशर्रफ थे. उन्होंने क्या किया 1999 के अंदर उन्होंने जो एग्जिस्टिंग डेमोक्रेटिक गवर्नमेंट थी उसको हटा करके Pakistani General Pervez Musharraf has overthrew the existing democratic government and he declared himself the chief executive, right? Now, do you think this is correct? Do you think this is democracy? No. Then what happened in the year 2002, he changed his designation to the president, right? And declared himself an additional 5 years. तो 2002 में उन्होंने क्या किया, खुद को प्रेसिडेंट घोषित कर दिया और 5 साल का कार्यकाल अपना और बढ़वा लिया. फिर अगस्त 2002 के अंदर उन्होंने क्या किया, he passed the legal framework order which stated that the president can dismiss the national and provincial assemblies. ठीक है, 2002 के अंदर उन्होंने एक लीगल फ्रेमवर्क ऑर्डर निकाला जिसके तहत उन्होंने कहा कि जो प्रेसिडेंट है, जो राष्ट्रपति है, वो नेशनल और प्रोविंशियल जो असेंबलीज हैं उनको भी भंग कर सकता है, डिसमिस कर सकता है, राइट. तो ये सारा मनमाने तरीके से उन्होंने अपना कार्यकाल चलाया, ठीक है, जो कि लोकतंत्र, जिसकी इजाज़त लोकतंत्र नहीं देता है, राइट. सो इसका मतलब क्या है कि कहने को तो वहाँ पर उन्होंने क्या किया, जो प्रीवियस गवर्नमेंट थी उसको उन्होंने हटा दिया और खुद अपनी मनमानी वहाँ पर चलाते रहे, राइट, which is not correct for a healthy democracy. Now what happened? ऐसा नहीं है कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर इलेक्टेड गवर्नमेंट्स नहीं आई पावर में, पाकिस्तान के अंदर इलेक्शंस भी हुए और इलेक्टेड रूलर्स भी वहां पर आए, उन्होंने भी वहां पर अपना राज चलाया, लेकिन जो फाइनल डिसीजन मेकिंग पावर थी वो किसके पास थी? मुशर्रफ के हाथ में थी, राइट? इसका मतलब जो गवर्नमेंट बैठी थी वो सिर्फ एक्टिंग गवर्नमेंट थी, फाइनल ऑर्डर्स किसके पास में थे? मुशर्रफ के पास में, जो कि ठीक नहीं है. नाउ व्हाट हैपेंड? आफ्टर इलेक्शंस elected candidates vested some powers and the final power rested with military officers and General Musharraf. It shows that it is not a democratic country, right? This is the same thing which I earlier repeated. I'm going to repeat again कि ऐसा नहीं है इलेक्शंस नहीं हुए, इलेक्शंस भी हुए, लेकिन इलेक्शंस के बाद भी जो मेजर डिसीजन मेकिंग की फाइनल पावर थी वो किसके पास थी? जनरल मुशर्रफ के पास थी. इसका मतलब पाकिस्तान के अंदर वो जो सरकार थी वो एक लोकतांत्रिक सरकार नहीं थी, right? It is not a democratic country. All right? So what I am trying to tell you here is that in a healthy democracy, all the major decisions should be taken by the elected leaders only and not by some military rulers, military leaders or some other people, right? So in a healthy democracy, people should choose their own government and that government should, take all the major decisions for the welfare of the people. What is important here? The government should take the decision for the welfare of the people. All right, so this is one of the feature of democracy. Now, what happened in USSR? In the USSR, in communist Poland and the US in contemporary Iraq, power lied with externals instead of elected locals. Now you all must be knowing that during the Cold War era, US and USSR, they were the, two poles. They were the, they were opposites of each other. They were competitors rather, I would say, right? Because US was a capitalist economy, USSR was a socialist country, right? So now what happened? For their own benefits, they have interfered in other countries and then, they had powers, right? Afghanistan is an example, Poland is an example, Iraq is an example. So now again we cannot call these countries as democracies. Let us look at the, Syria is also one of the example. Now let us look at the second feature of the democracy, which says free and fair electoral competition. So in a healthy democracy, there has to be free and fair elections. Let us take an example of China. Let us understand it with the example of China. हम इसको एक चाइना का एग्जाम्पल लेकर के और समझने की कोशिश करते हैं कि फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शंस कितने ज़्यादा ज़रूरी हैं. हमारे देश में भी इलेक्शंस होते हैं, फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शंस होते हैं. इंडिया में क्या होता है? वी हैव मेनी पार्टीज, है ना. अब हमारे पास बहुत सारी पार्टीज है. कितनी सारी पार्टीज है? कांग्रेस पार्टीज देयर, है ना. देन वी हैव बीजेपी इज देयर, समाजवादी पार्टीज देयर, आम आदमी पार्टीज देयर. देयर आर मेनी पार्टीज, राइट. सो पीपल कैन चूज, right? There are many other parties. I am only writing for the most popular ones. So people, when they go for voting, they have choices, right? Some people might like, Samajwadi Party, some of you might like BJP, some of you might like Aam Aadmi Party, and others might like Congress or many other parties. So we have choices. But in China, what happens? In China, there is only one party, all right? So in China, what happens? Whenever there are elections, people do not have choices. There is only one party, right? So people have to vote to only that particular party. So do you think it is fair? No, there is only Communist Party in China. So when people are going to vote, they are bound to vote to only one party, single party, right? So which means we can say that this is not the way, this is not the correct way. In a healthy democracy, there has to be, many other parties, and people should be allowed to participate in elections in a free and fair manner. So if there is only one party, you are bound to vote to that particular person, which is not correct, right? Now what happens? Let us take one more example of Mexico. Since independence 1930, Mexico presidential elections have been held every 6 years until the year 2000. each and every election was won by PRI. What is PRI? Institutional Revolutionary Party. There was one party. So every year, you know, only this single party was coming to the power. Why it was happening? Let's see, in Mexico what happened? This party was paying lot of money on the elections, right? And they have, you know, told all the media to, you know, उन्होंने मीडिया को बोला कि आप हमारे बारे में ही खाली प्रचार करो. जैसे हम देखते हैं ना, अलग अलग बहुत सारे न्यूज़ चैनल्स हैं हमारे यहाँ, आज तक है, एबीपी न्यूज़, इंडिया टुडे, सो मेनी न्यूज़ चैनल्स आते हैं. तो इन्होंने क्या किया, मैक्सिको में इस पीआरआई पार्टी ने सारे न्यूज़ चैनल्स को खरीद लिया, सारे अखबारों को खरीद लिया और उनको बोला कि आप सिर्फ हमारे बारे में ही प्रचार करो. इवन उन्होंने क्या किया, जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफिस में, यू नो, जैसे गवर्नमेंट टीचर्स थे, उनको भी उन्होंने बोला कि जैसे पेरेंट्स आते हैं पेरेंट टीचर मीटिंग में, तो आप उनको बोलो कि हमारे को ही वोट दें, राइट. तो इस तरीके से ये जो पीआरआई पार्टी थी, इन्होंने क्या किया, इन्होंने इलेक्शंस में, यू नो, चीटिंग करी. वी कॉल इट चीटिंग, राइट. ये चीटिंग ही है ना कि सिर्फ खुद का प्रचार करो और बाकी पार्टीज का प्रचार मत होने दो. तो सिर्फ अगर इफ यू नो ओनली वन पार्टी, इफ दे विल बी फोकसिंग ओनली ऑन वन पार्टी, द मीडिया, द न्यूज चैनल्स, द गवर्नमेंट ऑफिशियल्स, द गवर्नमेंट एम्प्लॉयज, if they will be focusing only on one party, what will happen? The same party will win, right? So this was happening in Mexico. So a free and fair electoral competition is very, very important, right? A fair and free electoral competition where the existing ruling party has a fair chance to lose is an aspect of democracy, right? So we all need to have choices, right? It should not happen that only one party is given importance, right? Or there is only one party, people do not have choices. So there has to be a free and fair electoral thing. Okay, so this is another example of democracy. So the third feature of democracy is one person, one vote and one value. All right. So what does it mean? That political equality is the basis of democracy. Political equality is very, very important, which means that in a country all the citizens are equal, right? And as I told you that people who are above the age of 18, they all have right to vote in our country, right? In different countries the age might be different, right? But more or less I would be taking 18 because in our country 18 is the way. Now let us, you know, take some examples. In a few instances where equal rights are denied have been observed. So what happened? In few countries equal rights were denied. How? देखते हैं. एस्टोनिया में क्या हुआ? Citizens rules made it very difficult for people from Russian minorities to gain the right to vote. एस्टोनिया इज वन ऑफ द कंट्री. इस कंट्री के अंदर क्या हुआ, जो रशियन माइनॉरिटीज थी उनको प्रॉपर वोटिंग राइट्स नहीं मिले, है ना, विच इज रॉन्ग. In Fiji, the electoral system gave more value to indigenous Fiji than Indian Fijian. What does it mean? Fiji एक कंट्री है, तो फिजी कंट्री के अंदर क्या हुआ, जब इलेक्शंस होते थे तो वहाँ के जो नागरिक थे उनके वोट की वैल्यू ज़्यादा थी और जो इंडियंस थे जो फिजी में जाकर सेटल्ड हो गए उनके वोट की वैल्यू कम थी. तो ऐसा भी नहीं होना चाहिए. एक हेल्दी डेमोक्रेसी के अंदर ऐसा कभी भी नहीं होना चाहिए. So these are some examples which contradict the basis of democracy where an adult citizen must have one vote with equal value. इसका मतलब है कि ये ऐसे कुछ examples हैं जो बताते हैं कि डेमोक्रेसी के अंदर क्या होना चाहिए कि एक व्यक्ति जो वोट देगा उस वोट की वैल्यू सेम होनी चाहिए सभी जगह पर. So this is also very, very important. Now let us move on to our next example, rule of law and respect for rights. So in the country the rule of law has to be there and there has to be, you know, respect for the rights of the people. So government should respect the dignity of the people, right? Government should respect the rights of the people. You all must be aware that in our country, which is India, what is supreme? The constitution is supreme. Even the government has to follow the rules set by the constitution, right? So rule of law is very, very important. Let us understand it with the help of the example of Zimbabwe. So what happened in Zimbabwe? In the year 1980, Zimbabwe gained independence. The leader Robert Mugabe of the ZANU-PF party, which led for the freedom struggle, ruled the country. Okay, so Mr. Mugabe was the president of the Zimbabwe, right? Then what happened? Mr. Mugabe, what he has done? The President Mugabe used malpractices in elections so that his party always won. Only the verdicts of the ruling party were presented by the television and radio since a law existed that restricted the right to criticize the president. तो उन्होंने क्या किया? उन्होंने एक रूल निकाला कि कोई भी प्रेसिडेंट को क्रिटिसाइज नहीं करेगा, राइट? और जो रूलिंग पार्टी थी खाली उसी के बारे में अच्छी अच्छी चीज़ें टीवी पे, रेडियो पे, न्यूज़पेपर्स में दिखाई जाती थी ताकि वही प्रेसिडेंट बहुत ज़्यादा पॉपुलर हो जाए. और उन पे ये भी आरोप लगा कि उन्होंने इलेक्शंस में क्या किया? मैल प्रैक्टिसेस और फ्रॉड्स किए जिसकी वजह से उनकी पार्टी जीती. Harassment was done to the independent journalist who talked against the government. तो जो जर्नलिस्ट गवर्नमेंट के बारे में गवर्नमेंट को क्रिटिसाइज करते थे, ऐसा तो नहीं हो सकता ना कि हर गवर्नमेंट परफेक्ट है, हर व्यक्ति परफेक्ट है. सी देयर आर ऑलवेज पॉजिटिव्स एंड नेगेटिव्स, राइट? सो हमें या फिर जर्नलिस्ट जो होते हैं या बीइंग अ स्टूडेंट्स को भी क्या करना चाहिए? जब हम पढ़ाई कर रहे होते हैं तो हमें दोनों एस्पेक्ट देखने होते हैं, पॉजिटिव और नेगेटिव. सिमिलरली जर्नलिस्ट का काम क्या है? वो गवर्नमेंट के सारे कामों को देखते हैं. अच्छा काम करते हैं तो वो उसकी क्या करते हैं? तारीफ करते हैं. एंड इफ गवर्नमेंट इज डूइंग समथिंग बैड तो वो उसको भी दिखाते हैं. तो मुगाबे ने क्या किया? जो जिम्बाब्वे के प्रेसिडेंट थे, उन्होंने उन जर्नलिस्ट को बहुत ज़्यादा टॉर्चर किया और उनको हैरेस किया बहुत ज़्यादा कि तुम हमारे बारे में उल्टा सीधा क्यों लिखते हो. सो दिस इज नॉट करेक्ट फॉर अ हेल्दी डेमोक्रेसी.
To watch the complete video, download the Upbind educational app from Play Store and App Store.